Yeah, alright, and we are live. Welcome, Mr. Bancroft, to the Breeding Better Comics podcast.
Thank you for having me. Oh my god, I'm looking up the YouTube and you're like a little avatar.
Yeah, I'm what you'd call a weeb. A filthy VTubing weeb.
Weebgate Liz, huh?
Oh, yeah. No, I was thinking about it and I was like, well, why wouldn't I do it since it's going to be something fun and interesting to do? And it's yet another point of uniqueness for Comicsgate.
Yeah, this is cool. I'm down with this. We're streaming from Discord right now, so like I guess it has other options that StreamYard doesn't have.
Well, I'm not necessarily streaming through Discord, it's just what I use for like chat and cameras because it gives me a lot more, what do you call it, options of flexibility when it comes to quality. Because I can adjust your volume on my side, you can adjust it on your side, and then I can adjust it through OBS again.
And too technical for me.
Yeah, I don't expect everyone to do it, and just that I've been streaming before, and it's what I did. Let me move my avatar a bit. I've been streaming before, and it's what I did before on Twitch, and I was like, well, I'm already accustomed to it, so why not do it?
Sounds good.
Yeah, I'm supposed to have a chat box somewhere here, but I think I screwed up my... Oh, there we go. And people can see their messages.
Just in time. For passion. My forehead is becoming legendary.
Oh yes, I can actually blow you up a lot more.
No, don't do that.
Right, I think we can be... Oh, okay. Formatting achieved. And so in this podcast... Oh, the background is a Frazetta painting. Yeah. I don't know if I'm necessarily allowed to use a Frazetta painting,
I'm sure
but
you'll be fine.
I don't think Sarah would mind. Sarah's pretty cool on Twitter.
She's out there protecting her father's good name.
I think the crazies. Oh yeah, I think he's her grandfather, Frank Frazetta. And as she should, man. Like that guy has created so much great work that to be tarnished by morons, it would be a crime in itself.
It would be tarnished. You'll just be cancelled. And cancelled by idiots who would never have liked him anyway. So everyone else gets to enjoy him in peace. That's how it works, I think.
Oh yeah, I've seen that so many times. They're just like, yeah, you aren't gonna buy my book. You didn't buy it anyway in the first place, so good riddance. Alright, I'm asking in the chat if the music is too loud because it shouldn't be.
Any music?
Oh, I haven't rigged it so that
music?
You shouldn't.
I don't need chat music.
Yeah, it's only for the chat. This is strictly for the chat.
Okay, cool.
Since, the cool thing is that I saw someone had just asked Sabaton if they can stream with their music, and they said yes, and I'm like, well, why shouldn't I try? So I emailed them. They were like, yeah, as long as you don't promote politics, religion, or not use it in any kind of like commercial product, you can do that. And I'm like, fucking cool.
Yeah, we don't need to get into politics or religion tonight.
Oh yeah.
Well, this morning for you. It's morning for you, yeah?
Yeah, it's like 10:30.
How is that avatar moving? Is that
That's
following
me moving.
Something?
Yeah, it's following me.
Right. So every time it goes like with its eye, that's you twitching.
Yeah.
With your eyeball or something.
Every time I blink or wink very sexually at chat, that's me.
Yeah. Technology. It's beyond me. Yeah, I've seen people have something similar to that, but I got no idea how to do it.
Yeah, there's a 2D version that I like more, but it's expensive as hell, man. That's like an arm and a leg. It takes a month to produce, and it costs like $1,000.
Yay, Rob's here.
Hey, welcome, Mr. Replicator. 11:30 in Finland. Oh, Finland are ahead.
Sit back, Rob. Rub a bit of Vaseline on the camera for you.
I'm gonna find a more titillating backdrop for next time, so there's more to look at and not just parts of a snake. Or maybe.
That's
Wait.
all right. So it's
I'll
all
just-
a work in progress.
Yeah, I'll just lower you a bit on the screen so they can see the Death Dealer a bit better.
Oh yeah, that's good. That's good. Thomas from Finland, the girl who beat my daughter in the jiu-jitsu competition, her family's Finnish. So now
Also,
they're my model
also,
enemies.
yeah, well, just genetic diff. Wait, now that you've mentioned it, how did that girl end up in your daughter's category? Because you said that she had won like a bajillion gold medals. That sounds like she should be.
53.
Yeah, man, she should be at least 3 categories above her.
Well, it's by belt and weight and age. So she's just a freak. Her whole family just lives and breathes jiu-jitsu. They travel the world, and yeah, I mean, she didn't really stand a chance, my daughter. But she wants to have another crack at it. That's the second time she's gone up against that girl. The first time it was over in 10 seconds. This time she lasted almost a minute. So I'm hoping, next time she'll be able to put up a bit more of a fight. But yeah, it is a bit like they live in Sydney. They're a Finnish family, but they've emigrated here to Australia. They live in Sydney, but they come down to Victoria to take our golds.
Yeah, that's kind of a dick move, isn't it?
It's a bit like you live in, there's probably no Americans in the chat, but, there's Woodrow. You live in Texas and then you travel over to New York to go in the state championships. I mean,
Yeah, it's kind of like, hey, you wanna watch your own pond there, buddy? The experience does usually win, especially in jiu-jitsu, but I'm happy for your daughter, man. Raising a savage is congratulatory.
she's pretty, yeah. It's like, you're proud as a parent. I know the extent of my involvement has been taking her to and from jiu-jitsu and probably a little bit of encouragement and stuff, but she's the one who really puts in the work, and it's crazy to see. It's crazy what you can do in that sport.
It is, and I'm glad she's starting so young.
Yeah. There's if she sticks with it, she could be a black belt by the time she's 18.
Oh yeah,
Which would
man.
be rad. Imagine how cool you'd be. A black belt in jiu-jitsu means something. All the kids I used to grow up with were black belts in karate, and it seemed like everyone was a black belt in karate. I'm like, what's going on? They're just handing out black belts, and they didn't seem particularly tough.
They kind of
So-
do, because I used to train
Yeah.
Shotokan karate, and as long as you train long enough and just show up for the exam and ace the exam, you get your belt. In jiu-jitsu is like a constant exam, like every day. So if you spend like a
Yeah.
year not progressing, you ain't getting a belt.
That's right. Yeah, and so because you have to know certain things, and then you only get to and it's the teacher who's going to give you the belt, and then you only get to learn those things through grappling and one-on-one, and it's really cool. It's really cool.
Yeah, man, I miss it. I haven't done jiu-jitsu in a while because of where I live, but I miss it a lot. Yeah, silver
Woodrow's
is a huge
asking-
achievement.
Yeah, she's won gold before. She was actually the national champion the year before, I think, maybe 2 years.
Oh damn! Congrats.
But that was for white belt, so that was a belt down and an age bracket down. But yeah, she she Kimura this girl who had no idea what was happening. It's like yank. Yeah, and Woodrow asked, yeah, she did it as it wasn't like a modified one. It was from back mount, and instead of getting the things on the neck properly, I don't know exactly how it works. She used like a fist or something. I don't know. She was telling me. Um, some of these kids with the chokes, their necks are so small. You have to adjust the chokes because
Oh
it's
yeah,
hard to get the pressure necessary on their tiny necks.
it is. It is.
Video. There's a video we filmed it, obviously, being parents, and the
Oh, of
woman,
course.
the mother of the other girl, was yelling to her daughter, "Break the neck! Break the neck!" She meant the grips on the neck. She didn't mean break her neck, but it was just funny to hear. A mother yelling out to a couple of 9-year-old girls, "Break the neck!"
Oh man. Yeah, I've seen it. Jiu-Jitsu brings out the savage in parents too. Like, yeah, choke him, twist his head off. Yeah. Anyway, the reason we're here is to talk about improving as an artist, specifically in comics, because there isn't much material on it. There aren't even a lot of talks on it, especially now with what do you call it? Concept art being so huge. There are constant podcasts about how to get better in concept art, at design, or how to sell your concepts to like Blizzard and Riot and
Trent
whatnot. But
Kanuga.
oh yeah, I love Trent Kanuga. He's godlike. But there aren't many people talking, hey, this is how you improve this comic as a comic art. This is how you get your pages to be more interesting, your art to go to the next level. When people ask, hey, how do you start as a comic artist, they're usually thrown to how to draw comics the Marvel way, which is decent, but I also feel that it's outdated.
It's the basic formula. It's all like Newton's theory of gravity, but physics has moved on a bit from there. It still holds true, but in general, but there's a lot more sophistication out there now. A lot more variety and styles, and you can just do more now with the things that you couldn't do earlier back when that book was made. So they were drawing knowing that the colors were essentially going to be flat. So they drew for that. Now who knows, all sorts of different kinds of comic art.
Yeah, they did that book for like the 9 panel grid and whatnot, and now we have these pages that are like 80% of the page is like a splash, and you have like 3 inserted panels that are just there to kind of move the story along. But they're there for the sake of being there. I see that a lot in like Canary and Brett Booth. I fucking love Brett Booth's panel and page layouts. That man knows that comics is about art and he's not afraid to show it off.
Jasper Plan 9 just atted Brett Booth on Twitter saying, "You should launch your book on Bancroft's channel."
Yeah.
I don't think that would happen. But he said, "Oh, I can't do that sort of thing. I've got bad internet."
Yeah, man. Here's the shitty thing about Brett Booth. He lives in a rural area in Texas, literally in the middle of the desert, so his internet is absolute dog shit. I did an interview with him and we had to do it through the phone. He was on the phone and I was through this conference website that offered like free phone codes. It was the whole thing to set it up, but we did it.
Well, that's good to hear. It's good to hear that he's open. But I don't think he'll be able to make my stream, unfortunately.
I can give you the website. Everything's free to use, and I think that's the only way to do it. And oh, you also stream very late, so I don't think that is gonna work, time wise. But when it comes to like the tech part, I can help with that because I'm in Europe and he's in Texas, so we made it work. But yeah, man, tell us how you've improved as an artist, because this is about you. This is about your journey and how you've improved on your craft. And
yeah, well, when I first started to do the comic, I did. I mean, I was one of those people who never stopped drawing or making art. So I had that sort of skill, but it wasn't really refined or anything like that. and I was just looking at the basics as well, like, oh, what's the Loomis method of drawing a head in different angles, and how do you draw the figures and all this sort of stuff, and that was just completely overwhelming. So I just thought, you know what, I'm just going to learn on the fly. So I need to draw a panel of you know a shot from, say, the legs up. I'll learn how to do that. So that's what I did. I'd go out and I'd watch some tutorials, how to draw a figure, how to frame something like that. I'd look at like, what's he wearing? Okay, so I'll go and look at what other people have done to draw that, and that's how I did it. And then, okay, next panel. All right, what have I got to learn here? All right, this panel's set in a desert, rocky desert. Okay, well, how have other people drawn rocky deserts? I think I'll be able to draw a rocky desert. Okay, so I went and did that, and then and that kept happening. And then 5 panels later, it's like, oh, I've got to draw fire. How do you draw fire with ink and colors? That's weird. So I would, go and research that, and so it was a very slow going process for me at the start. And every single thing, every single element. And I'm famously, known for this thing right here. Well, not famously, it's well known in Comicsgate at least, for this thing, the ginger root hand. That's just something. You're like, okay, how do you draw hands? And some things are pretty easy to draw, and some things aren't. Some things are pretty complicated. Some things there's easy reference for, and some things there aren't. I see you guys are talking about hair.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, hair is like, when I first started inking hair, I was just kind of, okay, hatch at it like it's hair. Like, you got to draw each individual hair, and it just ends up looking like a mess. I'm like, that doesn't look right. So then I go and research that, how do comic book people draw hair, and learn a bit here and there. And that's pretty much how the first 2 or so years of me doing a comic went. It was painfully slow, but eventually I started realizing I could go back and reference the bits of my own art that I liked, and then I kind of got into a groove there, and then eventually, I didn't really need to go back and sort of reference my own stuff as much. I could just sort of, I built up that muscle memory, but that took years, like 3 or 4 years to get to a point where I was like, oh, I'm actually happy with how this is looking. But it's a lot, it was a whirlwind learning curve. I've got, I feel like I'm only just started on it. I've got so much to learn still, but I'm going to continue doing it the way I've always done it, which is learning on the job. So everyone who buys a Lucent will be able to see that progression move forward from page to page.
Yeah, was there a moment where you felt a breaking point, where you finally got something that it finally clicked? Let's say, like anything, like drawing hands, drawing hair, like this is a topic, or drawing faces, because I feel like that 10,000 Amuro is more or less accurate.
Yeah, well, not for everything. It's for something, for one thing. Like, I could not for the life of me figure out how I was supposed to draw the folds on clothes. And that's still a massive struggle for me. And I've since learned that comic book artists don't really like to do that. That's why they like to draw, people in tights
I know, right?
and skin, because it's just that much easier. And it is. It's so much easier to not have to worry about how is this, jacket folding this way and that way, and how do you draw a hat consistently at all different angles, and what's the size of the hat? It can be a nightmare, but I've drawn almost 2 books worth of a comic. And when I say books, I mean big book, 60-page book. And I feel like just now, I finally got a couple of my characters to look how I see them in my head. Because I have an idea in my head and then I draw it and it's like, it's okay, it's pretty good, but I'm not going to sit here redrawing faces, for 6 months. I've got another panel to draw. So, the thing is, and Eric Canetti says this as well, I'll get it next time. And then you just try a bit harder next time. And then, again, that's, you do the same thing. You just keep an eye out for how other artists are doing, say, eyes. Like, how do they draw women's lips? How do they draw a man's brow or his hairline? Hairlines are a nightmare for me. I couldn't figure out, like, what am I supposed to do? So
Oh
the
yeah, man.
characters at the start had manga hair, going down forwards because I couldn't figure out what to do with this, you know.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Especially for men, like
but
how do you draw an attractive male hairstyle that's like shortish?
yeah, well, you see, even going back to Kirby and uh, Buscema, they their hair looked a bit weird, a bit comic booky. They look great. I mean, I love that style. Buscema is still probably my most favorite, sorry, comic book artist of all time. That old Spider-Man style. I just dig that so much. But that wasn't really the style of my comics. So I was always just on the lookout. And even now, I'm not really satisfied unless on every page there's something, whatever it may be, that I have to like stop and go, oh, how the hell am I supposed to draw this in black and white?
Oh yeah.
You know?
Whenever I reach that point, I'm like, wait, I have to draw this now. I take a break and I probably look. I spend like 15, maybe 20 minutes of looking at how the artist I enjoy and I'm influenced by have drawn it. Let's say, oh, I'm supposed to have a tree in the foreground, but I have to make it look cool because there's some important element on it. Well, time to look up Brett Booth and Capullo and McFarlane.
Yeah, and some things came really easy, like trees for me. I think I don't know, I just got it. The way I want to do it. Maybe not as cool as a Capullo tree, but the way I wanted to draw it. Whereas other things were always elusive. There's a guy in the Lucent who can manipulate water. And there's a scene at the start of the book where he's like, there's all this water everywhere, and he's collecting it up. Just like you imagine, I don't know. I've never watched Avatar, but it's how I imagine it might be when they're bending things or whatever. But he's just sort of collecting it up towards him.
Oh, I
And then
see.
it all was supposed to swirl around him, actually. I since drew, I don't know if you can see it there, I since drew a print of him. It's a bit glossy, so the colors might be getting blasted out. But it's just like water swirling around him, and he's like that. And the first time I drew that, I couldn't do it. I mean, it was I had an idea, but it wasn't in my capability. My dream was stretching out further than my ability, and I just had to, in the end, originally just ended up drawing a whole lot of vertical lines going up. So it was like those water fountains that just shoot water up. It
Yeah,
looked a
yeah.
bit like that, and they were just standing in the middle of it. And it was like, well, that's the best I can do because I don't know how to. I don't have the skills. So I learned, picked up a bunch of skills along the way, and then when it came to doing the edits and remasters on the Lucent, that was one of the first things I went back to and fixed, and yeah, ended up pretty much how I imagined it to be. So you don't really notice along the way that you are improving until you go back and do something like that.
Oh yeah, and looking at the Lucid, all your characters are in like regular clothes, at least from what we've seen. So it's not like you're doing yourself any
Yeah,
favors by doing that.
I didn't know, and plus that was just, I mean, that was the story. I didn't start by saying, I want to make a comic. What am I going to do? That's not how it started for me. I always had my story. I was developing it. I was writing it. I was learning how to write at the time. I was studying creative writing. Um, I was learning that craft, and the story was always and still is the underpinning to the whole thing. So when eventually I realized that this story would be best told as a graphic novel, that's when I realized, okay, well, I guess I better put my art hat back on and get to work here. Um, Now I can't remember where I was going with that story, but anyway.
I mean, it started off as that you don't sit down and be like, "Hey, I'm gonna make a comic," and now what?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That's right. That's right. And like, so I didn't really come from that position where I was like, okay, well, what do comics have? What do they do? Why do they do that? It was just, what's in the story? Well, this is in the story. In my story, the people have powers, they use them, but they don't. There's none of that. Like I'm going to use my powers to fight supervillains, and so I'm going to have a cool name and then get dressed up in a cape and tights and go around the city like that. There's a little bit of something similar, but not really the same. It's much more akin to if you've ever seen that horrible movie, but it's based on a really good story, Jumper. Um,
I haven't.
which
I might have in the
you
past,
haven't.
but it doesn't ring any bells.
Yeah, it was a great premise based on a good series about people who can teleport. And the whole premise is just sort of, it's very similar to the Lucent. It's like, what would the world look like if this was real? What would the people who could do it do? And what would people who were trying to control it, um, what lengths would they go to? How would they be involved? All that. So it's all the same approach that I have with the Lucents. In the Lucent, there's people with all kinds of abilities, ranging from just sort of enhanced human all the way up to almost godlike level. And that's the kind of the premise of the whole setting of the story is, what would a world look like that? And in my mind, it wouldn't look like Superman outfits or Spider-Man outfits. They'd still be wearing normal-ish kind of clothes. They would look normal. They'd be human. They'd just be doing crazy things. So I was just serving the story. I had no idea that drawing a style, and again with the style of, I'm going to do a kind of a pretty realistic, or attempt a realistic style, because that's sort of what I was seeing in the European comics that I was reading at the time. The French comics is they draw a pretty kind of realistic
Oh yeah.
um, character and setting and place. It's not very stylized, is what I'm trying to say. And I thought, oh, that'll be good because you know I can always just I'll always have references for expressions and hands and feet and clothing. And then when you get into it, you realize it doesn't work like that at all. Like, I can look at my hand till the cow comes home, but if I were to draw this hand as it is right now, it would look messed up if it was a comic. It'd be like, ooh, what's going on with that hand? If I were to draw my face right now, I'd probably look uh, if I was trying to be exact. So imagine it, like, for instance, if you were tracing it, if you
Oh
just
yeah.
traced my face, it would look terrible. There's all kinds of visual shortcuts and ways of doing things that you have to learn. And I naively thought, well, I'll have all this reference and it'll all work. And I didn't understand that I was actually giving myself a mountain more work than I probably needed to. But at the end of the day, I wouldn't have done it any different. It's just, okay, it's just going to take longer.
Yeah, a reference and you being like, "Hey, I'm just gonna draw a realistic style." It can be a double-edged sword or a big trap. But here's something I wanted to ask you in regards to transferring what you have in your head to paper. Do you do any is it visionary? Any mindfulness exercises in order to make that easier? Or do you just, grind through it?
Not in the art stage. In the writing stage, I watch the entire thing play out in my head, like a movie, I suppose. Um, and I see all the characters, and that's how I sort of know what they'll look like and how they take up the space and what the setting might look like. But when it comes to the art phase, I just try as best as I can to fit what I see in my head down on the paper, and maybe I get 60% there sometimes, and that's pretty good. Um, very rarely will I get, oh, like, wow, that's exactly, not exactly, but that's pretty close to what I saw in my head. Other than that, I mean, I don't know of any techniques, any mindfulness or meditation or anything that might help me with that. I hear there's people who can't even see things in their mind. Like this is a thing that exists on a spectrum for people. I didn't know that, but yeah, I've met someone since learning about this that they can't see anything in their head visually. So to them, what I do, or no, what any artist does, would seem like a total mysterious process of just images coming out of nowhere.
Yeah, just between us in the chat, is that Rob Arnold?
Which way?
The person who can't envision anything in their head.
Could be. No, it wasn't, but that actually makes a bit of sense. That actually makes a bit of sense because some of the sketches that he showed me are just, yeah, it makes you wonder.
Well, now we know why he's a writer in it.
Just hashtag just a writer.
Yeah, so Tommy here has an interesting question. Has Thunderbun suggested that you go, I can't do that?
No, Joe is very aware of my artistic abilities. So he keeps it all within grasp for me. Um, and more than anything, he'll just say, "I see what you wanted to do there. I mean, at least I think I can see what you were trying to do there, but it's not working." And we've had to scrap entire panels because what I was trying to put on the page just wasn't wasn't translating. But there's nothing that I've that he suggested that I've said I've like, oh, that didn't work. Sometimes he would suggest this hand needs to be fixed, or this foot needs to be fixed, or this guy's head is too big, and I'll say no. But I was just very trusting, and I said, okay, I'll spend 10, 15 minutes on this. I'll go and I'll redraw it. And then what I would make sure I would do though is I would completely erase what I'm redrawing. So I'm not sort of like looking at it. And it's not influencing me at all what was there before. And then I would redraw it, and then I would overlay that on what I had before, so I could like flick it on and off and see the difference every single time. 100% of the time, the redraw was better, a big improvement, and all of a sudden, I can see, oh yeah, of course, the head was way too big earlier, or yeah, that head did look. What's the word that he always used? I can't remember. He'd always say some word, some Californian word, surely.
Or like
For
out of whack or off or
yeah, something. Yeah, it was yeah. Oh, yeah, no, it was a lot more colorful than that. Joe does not pull his punches, but that's exactly what you want in an editor. Um, uh, is someone to tell you the truth
oh yeah,
about your
it's
art.
so important to have a good editor like Joe to be like, hey, you fucked up this hand, stupid. Go back and fix it.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. And then sometimes we would say, like, this face is pretty. He would say bung, like this is a bung face.
Well,
And
what the hell is that? What?
I just like, I think he said that. Maybe I'm making that up. But I mean, like this guy looks like Frankenstein. What's going on there? But then we would say, well, it's in the background, and that's what it is. But most of them we did end up going through and changing because when you're doing an ongoing series, even though the art style will just naturally improve or progress or you know change up a little bit. I wanted it to be so that at the very least there weren't massive deviations that were, kind of they were, what they were? They were remnants of my learning that I sort of left in the page. I never do. I see a lot of the people, a lot of artists out there, oh, I'm doing my warm ups and everything. And me, I work full time. I've got a family, family commitments, sleep, all that sort of stuff. I'm like, I don't have time to do warm ups.
Oh
My
yeah.
warm up is on the page. I'm drawing. I learn on the page, and yeah, and hopefully, the progression getting better and better continues to happen over the years.
Yeah, when someone has a schedule like yours, warming up, it has to be on the page, otherwise you will never get shit done. Because I've seen a lot of like full-time artists, they're like, oh, I spent 3 hours warming up, here's a Batman piece. I'm like, is that a warm-up or are you just jerking around?
Yeah, and I've heard people say, "Oh, I don't have time for commissions," and then yeah, do it just an incredible warm up. And then the guy's like, "Man, I wanted to pay you $300 to draw pretty much this. Like,
Yeah, it's
maybe
weird.
instead of your warm up, you just do my commission."
I know, right? Someone who does great warm-ups and he streams them is Stjepan Šejic. Because you can see it's a warm-up because it's the guy who did Harlane for DC and he does Sunstone. He's a digital artist. And
Okay.
he goes in straight with color. He does his penciling is non-existent. He goes from extremely rough thumbnails to full-on color. His process
Full
is
on
not
color.
yeah. He just starts off with color like a traditional
Wow.
painter would. Like it's not something that should be aimed to be emulated because it's extremely difficult and it requires extensive knowledge behind everything. But it's amazing to
Mm.
watch. Like he can shit out a T-Rex in like an hour and be like, okay, warm up done.
Yeah, yeah. I used to watch concept artists like that. Do landscapes and dragons and knights and everything, and yeah, it's one giant mystery to me.
Yeah, Tommy makes a great point in the chat that there needs to be an understanding of how much lube critique needs. Because if you're more fragile and your editor's a hard ass, then you're just signing up for a lot of heart pain.
Well, if you're wanting to sell art, I mean, you really can't afford to be fragile, especially if you want to improve. And I think you don't have to. I see a lot of guys make the mistake of like saying, how do I word this? They're like bigging themselves up too much. And I get that they want to, put themselves out there with the best possible foot forward. But I always prefer to say, look, this is the best work I can do. I'm proud of it. I may not be in the top 1,000 best working comic book artists in the world, but I'm trying and I'm learning. And, so anytime anyone comes to me and says, dude, like that eye is completely messed up, I'm like, yeah, it probably is. It probably is. I'll do better next time. And I just don't take that stuff personally at all. Um,
Yeah. People need to be more open to unsolicited critiques as long as those critiques, are done in a humane manner, like you just said, like, hey, That eye you drew is kind of messed up, but not like someone who would just slide into your DMs and be like, "Hey, your art is dog shit. You shouldn't draw."
Well, even if someone said that, I mean, I've been sharing my art and comic on social media on the internet for 5 years now, and everyone's seen my. If anyone was following me since those old days, they would have seen my growth as an artist, especially as a colorist, because I had no idea what I was doing with the colors, absolutely none. And I'm still learning on that front too, which is why the book is not at the printers right now. Um, uh, yeah, so you oh, I'm trying. I keep getting lost, man. I'm sorry. I keep going off on tangents, and then I forget what I was
That
talking about.
that's fine. You're talking about not beating yourself up too much because I've noticed that a lot of people will either not post a piece or not finish it because they want it to always be as perfect as it can. Like, oh, I'm gonna redraw it again and again.
Enough.
I'm gonna
I
spend
don't
like
even.
3 weeks fixing it. No, motherfucker, just post the fucking thing.
Yeah. It's a shame. It's a shame. I'm like the PDF for my like the print PDF for the Lucent would be done now if I just had have known more what I was doing at the beginning, essentially. So it's completely fixable. I just have to fix it. So that's what I'm doing right now. But yeah, no, I totally get your point about not being too precious. It doesn't help anyone for anyone to be too precious. And that was what I was going to say. Yeah, people have told me, yeah, this kind of art, I am not into at all. Like, maybe the story's good, but I'm not going to read it. It just doesn't appeal to me, and that's fine. I have the exact same feeling towards other artists that are hugely popular. Not Frank Frazetta, but other artists that are hugely popular in CG as well. Not CG artists, but like um,
Yeah, like they
mainstream
have
artists that
CG
I want
fans.
to. Exactly, and I'm like, it's not my thing. I probably wouldn't read a book by this guy, but that he's a super famous artist. You got to understand that, and then you realize that you're not even in that tier. So just relax and have fun with it, and um, just roll with it. I guess. I guess that's what I'm
Yeah,
trying to say.
me
Maybe.
personally, I'm not a big fan of Jim Lee. I can enjoy the craftsmanship, and I won't kick a book out because Jim Lee is drawing it. But I'm not a Rabbit fan like I've seen a lot of people. And I'm like, what? I don't get why. I get the technicality of it, the technical skill of Jim Lee, and I respect and love that. But when it comes to like style, it just doesn't click with me. Just subjectivity and all that.
Yeah, no, totally. And when I was back in the day, I was a massive Todd McFarlane fan. And now I just look back on it, and I guess there's just other things I prefer now, and it's pretty surprising. I mean, I still have a bit of a nostalgic soft spot for Todd McFarlane, but there's other things now that blow my mind way more than me looking back on an old Todd McFarlane piece. So I can totally see your point about Jim Lee. I was never hugely into Jim Lee either. But each to their own. Each to their own.
Yeah, something that helped me not be precious with my art is watching the old Eric Kennedy streams on Twitch. Since
He's
95%
great
of
for that.
those,
Yeah.
oh yeah, 95% of those streams were traditional. And that guy would rip up a nearly finished piece because he's not satisfied with it and he'd start over. Every time I'd see that, something inside my heart died. That man is so unprecious with his work, it is almost scary.
Yeah, and even when he does accept them, he's pretty. It was like, oh, that's not that good, or that could have been way better. But anyway, I've got more pages to draw. He's very much a professional artist. He's doing production art. He understands what it is. I really, really like and admire Eric Canetti, and I feel quite privileged. Someone like me who just started this kind of artwork within the last 5 years, 5 or so years, can hang out with a guy like that and learn from him. So it's pretty cool. I mean, that's just the beauty of what we're doing here.
It is, as Tommy said, glorious. Master Kuni is glorious, and yeah, to be so privileged to just talk to them and be like, hey, what do you think about this sort of page or anything, or just have him draw and let him yap about his process, and you just sit there and listen. He doesn't necessarily do a tutorial or a guide, but if you listen intently, you can pick up a lot of things from what he's saying in regards like, oh, this is how he thinks about foreground, midground, and background, about legibility. The first and most important thing I learned from him was legibility. Because if I
Yeah,
can't
yeah, I've
read
had
what
those
you're doing on the
discussions with him as well.
page,
Yeah,
yeah, if I can't understand what's going on the page, your page is worthless. I don't care how pretty you've drawn it.
yeah, yeah. He's really good.
Here's an interesting question from Tommy.
Tommy,
Yeah, when you get a feel of how much narrative you like to put into one page, do you end up splitting it into multiple pages?
yeah, I feel so underqualified to comment on this, but uh, feel is the appropriate word. It's just feel. You know, I've always tried to make sure there's a beat on every page. There's the rhythm, like a heartbeat, a natural ebb and flow, so that every time, even if the page is side by side, there's a proper rhythm to it. Some pages works better than other pages. I I can't really answer the question in a way that I'd be able to answer a technical question about coloring or line art or whatever, because it really is just a feel thing. And spent I grew up reading comics. I then ended up sort of studying them a little bit. I studied how movies were made and how they were framed and the pacing and all that sort of stuff. And I think that just kind of seeps into what I'm doing via osmosis. And again, really just a feeling. Like you can't tell what it is exactly, but you know when it is what it is and when it needs to be like that. And how to handle perspectives, all that sort of stuff. Like I'm always on the lookout for interesting cinematography. Let's just say that. It doesn't matter if it's in a comic book, doesn't matter if it's on a TV show or whatever. Something that always comes to my mind was that TV show. You know the Marvel TV show, Jessica Jones. Is that her
Oh
name?
yeah, yeah, I know
Jones?
that, but I didn't watch it. I don't know why people like that character so much.
I had no idea who she was, but my wife and I were enjoying Daredevil and Punisher, I think. So that okay, we'll give Jessica Jones a go. What I really noticed about that show is the whoever was doing the cinematography was making a very concerted effort to frame all the shots as if they were drawn as panels in a comic book,
Oh, that is
specifically
nice.
based on something like How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way, and making sure that because it's a chick in jeans and a jacket. There's nothing inherently interesting about her look. She's a bit of a goth chick. Okay, so maybe there's something there, but more than anything, it's just going to be city shots in office buildings, in buildings, on the street. They would constantly find something in the set, on the scene, to frame the camera with and stuff like that. So that was a really good. You just watch a show like that and just keep it in your mind to kind of absorb this stuff, so that when it comes to your own book, and now you've got a shot, you are in the same mindset. So you're thinking, all right, how can this shot be? How can I place the camera, in this panel, so that it maximizes the impact of the story and all that sort of stuff. I and again, this is all feeling, and I since learned because I watched lots of sort of tutorial videos on this sort of thing, and I since learned that in your shot you often want to have a foreground, middle, and background. So in almost all of my shots, there'll be something right up front to the camera, unless it's like a just a shot of a face or something. But in a lot of shots, I've got lots of different things in there. There'll be something close to the camera. There'll be something in the middle ground, and then the background. And when one of those things is missing, the panel looks flat. There's no depth going on. So if you're drawing a cityscape, and it's a wide city shot, put something up close. What it could be, like the edge of a building or something. Make sure the horizon goes all the way out so that you can see there, and then you got the middle ground, and that it really is amazing how that can make everything so much more dynamic and alive. And I didn't know that. I just absorbed that through paying attention to all this kind of stuff. And when I watched this video of this guy saying you really want to be doing that, I panicked for a moment and I went back and looked at everything. I was like, oh, I'm already
Oh,
doing
no,
that.
no,
That's
right?
cool. Okay, good. Yeah, cool. I
That
was like,
moment
that's
when you
cool.
find something new and you're like, oh, that's really good. I should have been doing it from the start. And you scurry back to page one to be like, hey, did I do that?
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
now,
yeah. And I've done that for a lot of things, and like that just goes to show that you really want to do a little bit of homework before you start your comic. Another thing was the 180 rule. I
oh
wasn't
yeah,
aware of originally. And just thankfully, I mean, I probably did break it a couple of times, maybe. It depends on your definition. But I've read some books where they're breaking it left, right, and center to the point where it gets hard to follow the direction and action and stuff like that. And when I first learned that, I was like, oh no. I went back and I'm like, oh. Another one was the rule of what is it, the thirds.
yeah, the rule of thirds that
Uh,
used a lot of in cinematography and photography.
Exactly. And again, I was like panicking, and I go back and okay, all right, good, all right. Just sort of that sort of thing. You just pick up along the way, especially since I work in graphic design. I think I have that inbuilt sense of understanding symmetry and balance in a composition and all that sort of stuff. So that was another. I was thankful that I had that background as well. But unfortunately, I can't give any advice other than yeah, just watch a lot of stuff, try and absorb as much as you can,
Consume
and
as much
then
shit that you like as you
apply.
can. Because I've
Yeah,
noticed that
yeah,
whenever I start reading a lot more Brett Booth or just, spending time on his Twitter and Patreon looking at his art, I did start picking things up, especially when the time to lay out a page comes. Because I no longer think of, oh, it's like four panels, I need to stack them in some way. It's like, oh, it's four panels, can I get a one almost splash page panel and just stick the other three in some other manner that can be also visually interesting and leading the eye, while also having a visual impact on every page. Just find shit you like and watch, read, and try to absorb it as much as you can.
yeah. When I started, I had no idea how to do that. I was just okay. So you need panels. All right. Well, I'll just look at what other people have done for their panels, and I would just sort of try and do something similar. Whereas that was a bit restrictive, and I ended up thankfully moving away from that. Whereas now I'm doing a little bit of that thing that you mentioned earlier, where you're like, I'm visualizing something. Maybe it's a body, maybe it's a establishing shot, maybe it's an object. What's its shape? How do I want it to, um, how do I want it to look? Maybe it's someone punching someone, so you're going to be doing that thing where they're going back, but then you want to it kind of goes out like that. Well, what's the shape of that? How will that be the most dynamic on the page? And then I kind of start with that shape, and then okay, well, we work around that. All right, well, okay, if we're going to have that shape, we can't have a big long vertical thing cutting right through it. You've got to have something else, and it sort of starts like that, as opposed to yeah. panel, 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 and then draw within that. That's not how I work at all anymore.
Yeah, I've even had pages where I just draw the scenes. I don't even think or throw in any panels. Like, hey, draw the panels in like at the end. Like, oh, okay, you can fit into this, this, or this. An interesting thing
Yeah.
about the 180 rule is that you can get Master Canadian to talk about it because he has this almost love letter rant from I think it was the movie Heat, where they perfectly show how to use the 180 rule and how to break it. And when you ask him about it, he would just go into like a 20-minute rant on how it works and how good it is, and he will probably do like a slight demo of where the camera is placed. He should be streaming tonight, and since he streamed at like 4 a.m. my time, I wouldn't be able to be there to ask him. But if anyone in chat here is on Master Canadian's live stream, just ask him about it. That's like a good 30 minutes of content right there.
I would love to listen to that because I feel like I know enough to know when um, it's not working or it's been abused. But I don't know if I know enough to, yeah, do a diatribe about it. So I'd be interested in learning more about it because it is a bit, um, yeah, it's a little bit. You got to visualize it, I guess, and it's like lettering, I suppose. You know when it's wrong, but when it's done right, it's invisible. You shouldn't ever see it. It's just all it is the story is flowing well and it's easy to follow and the people are on the right side of here and there and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, man, I've kept you on for long enough. You said you only had about 45 minutes, and we're going on in an hour.
Yeah, the family will be home by now, and I'm gonna head in, and busy, busy, busy. But this has been fun. This has been fun.
This has been awesome. Thank you so much for showing up for the very first live Bring Better Comics podcast, because I usually pre-record these. Because when I first started this,
Oh, you're gonna.
when I first started this, there was this campaign of people just troll flagging live streams, and I was like, you know what? Fuck you guys. I'm just gonna pre-record this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I copped a bit of that for a while too. Was that like I don't know 6 months ago or something?
Around that time, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I remember that. It seems to have calmed down.
Yeah,
But are
and
you
I'm
going to be doing this more often?
yeah, since this is mostly centered me talking to people about their journey. So anytime I have a guest, I'm always down to do this. And I should also start sharing a bit of my art as well because I do like doing art streams. And Rob did say, "Oh, I'd like to watch more art streams," and I'm like, "Well, time to serve Rob."
Yeah, I would suggest if you do an art stream, just try and maybe get a friend on to chat to while you draw. Finch, I think probably does it the best out of anyone
I mean, he
with
gets
his wife.
tortured by his wife.
Yeah, but that's good. People,
I know, I
people
know.
look at my show. People love tuning in to see someone get tortured.
Yeah,
So
it's kind
it
of, kind
works.
of, kind of what a live chat has become, man. Whether it's YouTube, Twitch, chat tunes in to watch you suffer.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much.
All right, man. I'll see you around. I will be doing more of this as soon as I find more guests. I'm usually centered towards artists specifically because I feel like that's the most underserved part. But I would stoop down to the level of talking to writers.
Yeah, yeah. Good luck. What are you going to talk about? I'm joking. I'm joking. I
I
think
know,
I had a
right?
good stream over on Leroy's channel the other day with all the writers talking about that sort of stuff. I'm a writer too. I haven't. No one's ever read anything that I've written, but maybe that'll change. Maybe people will like my writing. I don't know. Maybe they'll hate it. We'll see. See, you never know.
Woodrow says he doesn't like seeing you tortured. It breaks his heart. Also, hashtag fuck writers.
All right, man. We gonna end it there.
Yeah, man. Let's do this. It's been fun. I'll see you everyone around. Thank you so much for showing up. And have a nice evening, morning, afternoon, wherever you are. And that's Breeding Better Comics signing out.
Bye.